Welcome to part 3 of the basics of sake. In part 1, we covered what sake is and what makes one sake better than another. Then in part 2, we talked about the various grades of sake. Today, I want to talk about a few more things to help you get out and enjoy sake today as soon as reasonably possible. Those things are aging, temperature, vessels, which sake should you enjoy your sake from, and storage. So let's start with aging. In short, should you age your sake? Just like everything else, there's a long answer and a short answer to this question. And the short answer is drink your sake young. Sake will not improve with age. It will change, it will mature. And some people like it better as it does mature. But most of the time, you're going to want to enjoy your premium sake relatively young. Again, there is some aged sake in the market, but really it's like 0.0001% of all sake is matured. Most of it is meant to be consumed relatively young. I'll quickly add that that doesn't mean that this aged sake that is out there isn't worth searching for. It is. It can be really, really enjoyable. I love aged sake, but just remember, most of the time, most of the sake that you buy in the market is meant to be enjoyed relatively young. Sake matures kind of like a sherry in my mind, and it matures fairly quickly too. Sake will not really go bad provided it's been pasteurized, but it will mature to something that's decidedly different from what the brewer wanted you to enjoy. So if you want to enjoy the sake the way the brewer wanted you to enjoy it, get to it relatively soon and drink it relatively young. But note, there's exceptions to this. Again, there is some aged sake out there, but really it's a very, very small portion of the market, and very little is produced. Remember that sake will not increase in value if you age it. Aged sake is not necessarily more expensive or more valuable than young sake. So it really isn't worth collecting. It really isn't worth laying down. You want to drink it relatively soon after having purchased it. Next, let's talk about temperature. What temperature should you enjoy your sake? We hear about hot sake. We hear about chilled sake. Sometimes we hear that good sake should be enjoyed slightly chilled, all kinds of things. In short, you want to drink your premium sake slightly chilled. Just know that there's exceptions to that. Why is that? Because most premium sake, most ginjo, with all of its fruity aromas and delicate lines of distinction, all those flavors and aromas will be most easily perceived at slightly chilled temperatures. What's a slightly chilled temperature? Like a white wine, not just right out of the refrigerator. You want it to warm up a little bit more, and then you'll be able to perceive the most in that glass. So most of the time, you're going to want to drink your premium sake slightly chilled. Do bear in mind that there's lots of exceptions to this. Every single sake will show different facets, different flavors and aromas at different temperature ranges. So by all means, experiment. Let a sake warm up to room temperature. Warm it a bit. See how it goes. Just remember that most of the time, especially premium, delicate, fruity, aromatic sake, you'll get the most out of it at slightly chilled temperatures. So if I'm recommending to you to enjoy your premium sake slightly chilled, why is so much sake in the market served hot? Remember, premium sake like ginjo has only been on the market for about 50 years. So historically, traditionally speaking, warm sake is a larger part of the market than chilled sake, which has only been around for about 50 years in the form that we enjoy today. Another point to remember is that there is a lot of premium sake and less fully premium sake that can be enjoyed gently warmed. The problem is that there's very little information about that on the label. So pretty much you're left to your own resources to figure out what temperature is the best for a sake. So really, the easiest rule to remember is enjoy your premium sake slightly chilled, and that's going to get you through 90% of your tasting experiences. Next, I want to talk about glassware. Like most things related to sake, there's a long answer and a short answer to what glassware you should be using to enjoy your sake. And the short answer is wonderfully useful. White wine glasses make a great choice for enjoying premium sake like ginjo. The flavors and aromas of modern, aromatic, premium ginjo sake are really focused and amplified to a really nice level with white wine glasses. So white wine glasses are a great choice for enjoying premium sake. If you got them, use them. The last thing in the world I want to happen is for some people to say, I'd like to try some sake tonight, but we don't have the right glassware, so let's drink wine instead. It's like, no, we can't let that happen. And because white wine glasses are everywhere, it's easy to recommend them, and they do a great job for enjoying sake. So if you have a white wine glass around, you're done. You can just use that to enjoy your sake. Having said that, traditional Japanese pottery's got a wonderful appeal as well. I think Japan has the best ceramics culture in the entire universe, actually. And there's a very, very wide range of sake cups and utensils that you can use to enjoy sake. I also plan another longer video just on Japanese pottery and how it can be enjoyed with sake. But something about the visual and tactile appeal of a nice piece of Japanese pottery can really enhance the sake experience. Admittedly, a white wine glass or a larger vessel might do a better job of amplifying the flavors and aromas, but there's a bit more tactile, visual appeal can really enhance the sake experience as well. There are other vessels. For example, this is a traditional Japanese tasting glass, and while kind of boring, it is fairly technical and good. So there's a whole range of vessels that are out there. Smaller vessels are usually used in Japan because you pour for each other. You pour for your drinking partner, and they pour for you. And they do a great job of enhancing that communal experience. However, if you want to enjoy the flavors and aromas of a premium sake, you're probably better off with a larger vessel. And again, something like a white wine glass will do a great job. Next, I'd like to talk about storage. How should you store your sake? How should you take care of it? In short, treat it like a wine. Keep it cool and keep it out of strong light, and you'll be fine. Provided your sake has been pasteurized, it's not necessary to keep it in the refrigerator. If your sake is unpasteurized, and unpasteurized sake is known as namazake, then you need to keep it in the refrigerator or the chances of it going south are pretty high. But almost all sake exported from Japan has been pasteurized, and if your sake has been pasteurized, it is not necessary to keep it in the refrigerator, provided you're going to get to it in a couple of months. How long will a bottle of sake last? There's a date printed on the label of sake. That date is basically the date of shipping from the brewery. For all intents and purposes, it's about the date that the sake left the brewery. And you probably want to drink the sake within about a year and a half of the date on that bottle. Sooner might be better, but certainly after about a year and a half, I would start scratching my head. That doesn't mean that the sake is going to be bad after that. It just means that it will begin to mature and probably be a bit different from what the brewer had intended you to drink. So enjoy it within about a year and a half after having shipped from the brewery. Of course, this assumes that the bottle has not been opened. Once a bottle is opened, how much time do you have? Like wine, sake will suffer from the adverse effects of oxidation. However, sake is much more forgiving than a bottle of wine. With wine, you got a day or two before the fine aromas and delicate aspects of it start to blow off? With sake, any sake will last about a week after the bottle's been opened. Certainly that depends on how much has been drunk from the bottle already. It's very simple. The more oxygen that gets in there, the more the sake is going to lose its fine edges. But any sake, no matter how aromatic, should last at least a week. Sturdier, richer, earthier sake, maybe less aromatic sake, a fuller flavor profile, can last many weeks after having been opened. But the least common denominator is drink your open bottle of sake within a week, and you will be able to enjoy it to its fullest. Just a couple more things that I want to cover about the basics of sake. Very often we see this white, cloudy sake out there. What is that? How does that fit into the grand scheme of sake things? That white stuff is called nigori-zake. And nigori-zake means cloudy sake, and that's because it's cloudy. When we make sake, rice ferments in a tank, and fermentation is taking place as the rice dissolves. When that's all done, they usually filter out the rice solids to give us a clear sake. Back in the day being about 1,000 years ago, they didn't bother to filter that out. So nigori-zake is sake that they make by filtering the final rice dregs out with a much coarser filter to allow some of the rice solids to come through. Why do they do that? It's kind of a throwback to moonshine, to the way that sake was about 1,000 years ago. Nigori-zake can be extremely enjoyable, and sometimes it's sweet, sometimes it's dry, sometimes the rice sediment is very thick, other times it's much thinner, and nigori-zake can be very enjoyable. However, usually you won't get as many delicate nuances or subtle aromas coming out of nigori-zake as you will from a completely filtered sake. Another point, very often we hear questions about the water that's used in sake brewing. How important is the water? The water is so important that it goes without saying. You have to have great water to even begin to brew sake. There's a number of things that make water good for brewing sake, and one of them is very low iron content. You've got to have extremely low iron content if you want to make sake. But if you look in Japan, within the water sources that are considered to be good for brewing sake, and that's most of the water in Japan, you've got hard water and soft water. It's just a matter of the difference of the mineral content. Hard water gives you a very vigorous fermentation, very quick, and you get very full flavor profile with a quick finish. Soft water is a much slower fermentation. You tend to get richer, deeper, sometimes sweeter flavors out of that. Neither hard water nor soft water is intrinsically better than the other, but you will get different nuances of sake coming out of them. So with that, I would like to wrap up the basics of sake. Across these 3 videos, I tried to cover the main pillars of all the aspects of sake to give you just enough information to help you to go out and enjoy sake today. It should be much more approachable and much more accessible to you. From now on, the most important thing that you can do is to get out there and taste as wide a variety of sake as possible and enjoy it. So from this point in time, your sake education is in your own hands. Kanpai.